Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
When I was about 11 years old, we went to a pool near a forest. I was having fun, and I separated myself from my family to get closer to that forest. I don't know exactly why. I was just a kid and wanted to check it out. When I got closer, two young women in swimsuits approached me. They looked 18 to 21. One of them looked pregnant. They started asking me whether I want to go into the forest with them. I started being suspicious and got scared a little. I said no, but they were trying to convince me to go with them. I was refusing, but they didn't want to let me go. After like 5 minutes, they finally gave up. I felt uncomfortable. I tried to research this, and I found out human traffickers sometimes use their female victims to lure children. When I think about the fact that I was almost trafficked, I'm frightened.
Was on a train to the airport once to catch an international flight for a business trip. This guy wearing a suit and tie comes up to me and asks if I'm flying international. I say yeah, and he asks to buy my ticket. He's sweating profusely and looks out of breath and scared shitless. I'm like, no dude, you couldn't even use it. Don't you know? Tickets are tied to your identity. And he's like, please sell me your passport too, please. I'll do anything. I need to leave the country. And then he pulls out a large wad of cash. Tens of thousands of dollars, probably like you'd see in a movie. For a moment, I considered taking the money, but then I figured whoever was chasing this guy would probably come after me if I took the cash, so I said no, and he took off running to the next train car.
Was probably around 2004. I was a security guard, so used to listen to Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, like all the time. There was an episode on EVPs of violent entities playing, which has since been pulled from the archives, while I was home on the phone with a chick. Some point through the show, I just had this feeling I should turn it off, but I ignored it because I was still on the phone and wanted her to fall asleep so I could get off without her being weird. She was weird like that. When I do get off the phone, it was a long commercial break. Turn it off and lay down in bed. That's when I felt what I would probably describe as evil in the room. Mind you, I looked cholo, but when I felt that shit show up, my dumb ass hid under the blanket like a punk. It didn't go away, so I tried like making up some prayer, and that just pissed it off. It had me up against the wall poltergeist style. No pain or anything, though, and I didn't scream. Oddly, it seemed less like it was trying to hurt me, and more like you would expect a disappointed father would be, although this was an afterthought. Then I was back to normal. So I go to my computer to try to figure out what to do, because what else are you going to do in such a situation besides Google it? But whenever I got near it, the screen would like go to black static. So with no idea what to do, I lay back in my bed and wait for morning. Never went to sleep or woke up, so I doubt it was a dream. Plus, that whole day after when I went to class, it was like I wasn't in control, but watching from slightly further back. Back then described it like watching through a window, but today I'd say it's more like the vignette, like tunnel vision, in VR when you use that feature to prevent motion sickness. I didn't do anything weird, just went through a normal day. And that night, when I went to sleep, I had a dream that some light, although I think my mind added the light, like sucked out a bunch of darkness from me and said, the time for change is now. Or rather, it didn't say like verbally, but I like had the message when I woke up. And for half the day, I was like euphoric. They usually replay the previous Coast to Coast show the day after, but instead they used an older rerun and said it was because a lot of people reported experiencing violent entity attacks, and it was removed from the archive.
Okay, OP, you just unlocked some shit for me. I haven't thought about this in like 11 years, B college sophomore. Kind of figuring things out still, but getting more confident in life. Finding style. Start to notice people noticing me. Feels good, man. .jpg. I only point this out because I always had been kind of goofy and awkward. Unapproachable, if you will. So now seeing people be like outwardly friendly and initiating conversation with me was like new and foreign. Not sure if that makes sense, but anyway. Drive to campus one day. Get a kinda shitty spot far away from class, but no biggie, nice day for a walk. Fast forward to after class. Weather has turned to semi-shit. Light rain, windy. Walk back to car is kinda whack. Get 9/10 of way to my car. See a girl knocking on car windows kinda near where my car is. Just walking up and knocking, then looking in, moving on and repeating. Approach my car. She turns and I begin to notice some weird shit. Very, very pale. Extremely frantic like a tweaker. Barefoot and about 7 to 8 months pregnant. Asks for a ride to the bus stop as it's raining and she's pregnant. I oblige because that'd be shitty not to, but we're on a college campus that's packed, so I don't think anything could really go wrong. End up driving her about 20 yards before she yells to stop and just hops out of my car, yells thank you, and disappeared into some trees, nowhere near a bus stop. To this day, I still have no idea what the fuck that was all about. Oh, and I glossed over a very strange part too. The reason I mentioned the newfound confidence shit being a factor here was she was going through these like waves of like panic mania, and then when I'd ask her a question, she would momentarily calm down to an eerie degree, like someone that is getting sedated or something. I just assumed she was kinda hysterical 'cause pregnant and it was raining. Maybe she got lost on campus or was just having a really, really bad day. But we only corresponded for like 8 to 10 minutes, and she approached me and kinda had this weird soothing thing happen when I responded to her and agreed to give her a ride. It was like the fastest case of bipolar disorder, or she smoked meth right before I got there. But regardless, it was bizarre, and I'm sorta happy she just ran away from my car.
The stories involving possible trafficking reminded me of a suspicious experience I had a few years back. At an airport waiting for my flight. I think it was MSP, but I don't remember for certain. There's a somewhat flighty kid, probably around 8, with what I at first assumed were his parents. A man in his late 20s, early 30s, and a woman who was probably in her 30s, but maybe could have been older. They seem weirdly anxious about the kid getting too far away from them, but then again, worrying about a kid getting lost in a crowded place is a reasonable concern for a guardian to have. I said I, at first, assumed the man and woman were his parents, because later on when trying to rein in the kid, the man referred to him as brother. The age difference between them was big enough that it seemed unlikely to me that they were siblings. But it was still possible, of course. There are cases of parents having kids with big gaps in between after all. He called him brother several additional times, and it was in this really stiff and impersonal way. It wasn't an endearing lil bro or something, just the word brother, as if it was the kid's name. Both him and the woman seemed sorta shifty too. The woman barely talked at all. Don't do anything because everything weird about them also has a mundane explanation. I still think about this sometimes. Haunts me that they might have been child traffickers. Calling a kid brother is just so bizarre, I can't help but wonder if they avoided using his name because they didn't want anyone recognizing the name. Could have been nothing but God did those people give me the heebie-jeebies.
I have experienced some weird shit, but I don't know if I would call it encounters. You'll be the judge. I was living in a pretty shitty apartment with my brother-in-law, 1 year younger, when we were in college. He was away at his girlfriend's house. I'm at my computer scrolling 4chan or playing games or some shit. I hear footsteps in the living room, which is just next to my room. My desk is towards a window, so I have my back towards the noise. Walk out and turn on the lights, calling to see if my brother-in-law is home. No one there. Go back to the computer. Hear it again, but thinking it's just the wooden floor settling or something. Hear footsteps right behind me. No wooden floors in my room. And suddenly I get ice cold in my entire body. Slowly turn around, but there is no one there. Nope.jpg. Grab keys, run out and stay at a friend's house until morning. The other one is even less of an encounter, but here we go. I'm like 26 years old at this point. Friend invites me to help his brother to harvest his plants. Do tons of work for days. One night I went outside for a smoke. This is a house deep in the woods, so I can see the stars very clearly. One star seems to be moving. It isn't blinking, which airplanes usually do. I also notice that the path it takes has a downward curve like a falling star, but way slower. Suddenly it stops dead in its tracks, hang around for around 1 to 2 seconds, and then blasts off in another direction so fast I can barely keep up. It's gone from my field of view in a few seconds, going upwards and across the sky. I wasn't high when it happened. I had a big tolerance at the time, and the weed they grew were pretty weak outdoor grown autos. Got some minor stories too, and some really messed up stuff my mom and grandmother told me, but that's the best of my personal experiences. My mom had a best friend when she was a teenager. Her friend's dad died from some accident, so she stayed with her friend for a few nights to keep her company. One night, the friend's dad came into the room and laid down into the bed next to my mom and then vanished. My grandmother is very atheist, doesn't believe in an afterlife even though she has had a near-death experience complete with dead relatives and all that. Anyway, when she was a little girl, she was alone in the kitchen, her family in the other room. She saw a little gnome, or whatever you want to call it, run across the floor, around, I guess, 2 foot tall. He came out from somewhere under the table, ran into the shadows near the sink and disappeared. She isn't the type of person who tells me lies or outlandish stuff otherwise, and for all my life when I have known her, she sells gnome figures and little Santa Claus stuff. Apparently, it had such an effect on her. I don't know if I believe what she saw, but they are not delusional people. Other than that, I have heard a little girl voice call out hello to me when being home alone. And in my old house, I could sometimes hear doors slam in the basement while no one was there. Walk into a room I know I left dark, and when I get back, the lights are on. Or that all the kitchen cabinets and drawers are pulled wide open. Never felt a creepy presence from this, though, except the story I shared in the previous post.
So I have a friend who lives in Helsingør. I'd go and stay a few times a year, and there are a few creepy experiences I've had. There's a castle called Kronborg along the coast that we'd visit, and sometimes travel upwards towards Rönnberg, which is like a seaside marina village. Anyways, when you'd go along the coast at night, you would sometimes see patches of light beneath the ocean, accompanied by an almost indescribable silence. I live in the countryside at home in the UK, so I know quiet, and it's beyond anything you'd ever experience elsewhere. I am also convinced there is weird cultist shit going on in the remote areas. There's a forest with a graveyard about 30 minutes inland from Rönnberg, near a lake. and one time we walked through in the early hours of the morning, had been drinking in Hillerud, and there was a massive layered circle of candles in the middle with a knife at the center. We saw it and literally ran back to the town, so no further exploration, unfortunately. I haven't been for a while because of COVID, but may start a thread if any more creepy shit happens next time I'm there. Denmark can be weird.
Out driving in rural wooded area. Nighttime, foggy as shit autumn. Straight out of a generic shitty Halloween horror movie. Pedestrian pathway runs parallel to the road I'm driving on. Seen a few people walking dogs, riding bikes, etc. See this one dude maybe 200 meters away walking. Seemed normal enough, nothing threatening about him. As I get closer, I get this icy feeling in my whole body. Literally start shivering, teeth chattering. Feel sick and an overwhelming dread. As I drive past, he stops and looks at me. Looks like a completely normal guy, normal clothes, etc. But weird nonetheless to just stop and look like that. Think to myself, that was weird. Continue driving and finish up my errand, keep freezing to death. Get home and I'm still cold. No matter how many blankets and stuff I wrap around me, I can't get warm. Even had a space heater next to me blasting warm air. Feel cold for the next few days. Wake up one day and feel fine. Sounds lame now that I type it out, but it was weird as hell.
Before starting university, I wanted to work up some more money, but didn't want to go back to doing factory work. So I landed a holiday job for the Bund Naturschutz, a nature protection organization in Germany. The job involved being driven to a village for a day and drumming up donations and new members for the organization. It was pretty cool in the beginning, hanging out with people of a similar mindset, feeling like I was able to earn money and do some good at the same time, etc. The last village I went to before quitting was seriously weird, though. We stayed there for 3 days, and everybody there, except for an old couple at the local inn, felt incredibly hostile. We were basically under watch all the time, and people followed us around the entire day, even when we walked out of town for break, just sitting on a bench in the woods or some stuff. We would have stayed longer, but decided against it after the watching turned too weird on the 3rd day. I don't know much about the other 2 people with me since we weren't going around in a group, but it must have been weird as hell for them too. Personally, my breaking point was when I took a break in the woods, just sitting by a tree and reading when more and more people walked up the road and just stood in front of my tree a few meters away, watching me. Over 24 of them. Creepy as hell. Back then, I couldn't find out anything about the village before I forgot about it, due to psychological problems in my later life taking up my mind. But it's coming back up and I kinda wonder. I mean, it's probably just a harmless cult, or there's some really tightly knit living community wanting other people out, or something equally harmless. But back then being there, it felt incredibly creepy, and I absolutely didn't feel like it was harmless.
Be in a parking lot. A couple in their 50s approaches me. The man starts yelling that I have to immediately drive them to the hospital because his wife is in danger. I pull out my phone and tell them I'd call an ambulance. He screams that there is no time for that. The woman was rocking, so I got stressed and agreed that I will take them to the hospital. We get into my car. I start driving. Suddenly, their facial expressions change. "Go that way," orders the man. I realize I just fucked up. The man keeps ordering me which way to go. The woman says she knows everything about me. I want to stop, but the man points at his bag as if he had something he could hurt me with there. I eventually just stop the car, take my keys, get out, and leave them in there. After 2 minutes they get out. The woman took my book I had in the car and asked me if she could take it with her. I tell her yes. They leave.
I grew up in a really peaceful town and had no concept that people in the world can be fucked up. So when I was 10 or 12, me and a friend cooked up a money-making scheme. Would go to people and ask if they would give us their empty cans and bottles so we could recycle them and get cash for it. We were in an apartment house when one door we rang on didn't open, even though we could tell someone was standing on the other side. Guess he's not opening, let's go to the next one. Door fucking slams open. A gangly old man is holding a meat cleaver up to my eyes for a few seconds before lowering it and chuckling to himself about something. Both me and friend are paralyzed in fear as the guy starts talking about having a brain infection. The air from his apartment smells like sweat, cigarette smoke, and piss. Bids us a good day and goes back inside. You too. Operation Get Cans ended then and there. At least we got a grand total of like $15 from it all.
Similar experience happened to me. Well, the trafficking part. I live in SoCal. When I was 18, I used to take walks around my area at night. I did this because I hate the sun and wasn't easily freaked by the dark. This one time, I had decided to take my dog with me, who is a large Swiss shepherd. I was walking up a street by my house that has very few working street lights and came across a cardboard sign placed perfectly in the center of the sidewalk as if left for me specifically to read it. As a woman who's naturally quite curious, I stopped to read the sign. When I realized that this wasn't just a discarded sign, I was immediately overwhelmed by dread. The sign had a straight-up riddle written on it. Said something like, I have disease and permanent damage to my spine. Who am I? I had then decided to take out my phone and use the flash to get a photo of it before leaving in the other direction, but immediately as I let off the flash, I heard what sounded like a gunshot and felt the noise in my chest. It was so close. My dog was already running ears back in the other direction before I was. I started to run so fast after her and grabbed her leash. I thought I was being shot at, so I ran in an erratic pattern to make me hard to hit. I ran across the street while traffic was coming, and just trusted cars would stop for me. I remember looking straight into someone's car front window as they stopped with a look of horror on my face and tears as I ran. I ran into a nearby Ralph's and immediately told them to call the police. I think I was just shot at, and I didn't know if I was being followed. They called the police and a bunch of cops came out and found the sign and searched the area. They didn't find anybody. I was later told by someone that a similar sign was found by his girlfriend left on her car window shield in a dark place after work, and that in my area, this was a well-known tactic of human traffickers preying on curious women. They watch your pattern, leave a sign that is meant to distract you and stop you in your tracks, and then strike.
One day, I was 11 or 12 at max. I was at a friend's house playing some N64. My friend lived in a rural part of town, not far from my home, but basically near crop fields and an old World War II fort, Europe. The area gets pretty dark at night. It's 8 PM and I grab my bike to go home. Decide to cut through the crop fields to get home faster. It's winter, so it's pretty dark outside. I'm riding through the field and I spot a faint light in the dark, clearly a cigarette. As I approach, I see it's a man walking, so I say out loud, "Hey, give road, watch out!" As I pass near the man, he grabs me and stops me. Gets pretty close and says something I can clearly recall. Something like, "Hey, where are you going, huh?" I'm scared shitless. I think that's it. I'm gonna die. The man changes expression as he looks at me, says something like, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were someone else," and leaves me. I bolt away as fast as I can, and while I run away with my bike, he screams something at me. To this day, I think about what could have happened if I were a girl. I always thought the guy thought I was a girl because of my high-pitched kid voice, but then I took a closer look and saw I was just a scrawny and scared little boy. Recalling this today makes me really sick.
I remember this one time me and my dad went out to buy groceries at 8 p.m. It was a dark, warm night and we went to the small local grocery store. Dad told me to wait outside while he got the things we needed, and while I was waiting, some man approached me. He was 5'6", heavy build in his mid-40s, balding. He asked, "Hey there, how you doing?" And I immediately knew something was wrong. After he asked me that, he grabbed me by my arm. I was super skinny and weak, and I felt like he would break it. He started dragging me, kinda, and I screamed bloody murder at the top of my lungs. He let go of me and took off. I was there crying, and my dad ran out and asked me, "No need to yell, son, what's up?" I was like, "What do you mean I was getting kidnapped, for God's sake?" I was crying at that point, and I waited in the car after that. I was always scared of getting kidnapped, and I was super paranoid of it, since my parents always told me these stories of how men would tell kids they have awesome PCs back home and telling kids they should come with. And once they did, the men would murder them, then throw them in a hole with other bodies of children.
I have seen a family of deer only when I was alone. One big male with huge antlers, a smaller female deer, and a smaller third deer. Don't ask why I know their genders, because I don't. That's just my guess when I look at 3 deer together of different sizes. First time I saw them was completely out of place. I was in the middle of a third world like Pueblo in southern Mexico in front of somebody's front door in the middle of the night. I was out on the street walking down to the end, and I'm looking to my side and I see this giant deer just staring at me. Low light didn't let me see the whole thing, but I saw their silhouette looking at me as I was walking by them. Nobody lives in the house they were in front of, by the way. Other nights I would only see 1 deer but never saw them again until a few years later in San Antonio, Texas. Also, it is known that deer are rare in that part of Mexico, so it's very unlikely a family of them would be in the middle of this neighborhood. Second time I saw this family of deer was when I lived in San Antonio, Texas. This place is known for having tons of deer. One time I was in middle school and went hiking behind my house since I lived on a dead end. I wasn't that far from my house when I saw a family of deer just staring at me in broad day. At first, they came up to me. I heard them coming rustling bushes and waited for them. Then they left after I tried getting too close. I'm over 6 feet and I was looking eye to eye with the taller deer, so this was a huge deer. I'm so confused by this shit, bros. I seriously doubt any of this is a false memory. I clearly remember what it felt like the multiple times I've seen this family of huge deer. I know it has to be real, but how do I explain that it happened decades apart and in different countries without it being paranormal? Anyone know what a family of deer symbolizes? I felt no fear when they appeared.
Driving home one night after seeing a show back when I used to see punk bands almost every night. It's at least 2 a.m., probably a little after. I'm a bit tipsy, but not wasted. No excuse, drunk driving is terrible. I don't drink anymore. Get off the freeway at my exit. Area is a semi-rural, no sidewalks, few street lamps kind of place. I'm driving my old but reliable beat-up full-size van. I pass by a dude I recognize from various punk shows walking along the side of the road. We don't actually know each other, but he's recognizable. 300+ pounds, leather cut off, checkered work shirt, you know the type. My tired and tipsy brain thinks it'd be a cool idea to give a fellow punk a ride home. I turn around in the closed for the night gas station and drive back to the big dude. I roll up next to him, roll down the window and holler out, "Need a ride?" He looks at me weirdly and says no as he backs up a bit. I linger a minute, then take off. I'm the one providing the creepy, weird encounter.
I'll tell one I rarely share, except with close friends, because I'm worried of the potential repercussions. My family is originally from a very small town in Mexico, a ranch in the literal middle of nowhere. 15 years ago or so, Grandpa died and my parents decided to buy my grandma a house in a more civilized area. It was in Nuevo Laredo, and by American standards, it's still a shithole. Anyway, one day I went by myself to visit my grandmother out there. I was about 20 at the time. I took a bus across the border, arrived in town, and made my way to Grandma's house by foot. When I got there, she was nowhere to be found. This scared me, because my grandma is a tiny little old lady, only about 4'5". She also took care of my little cousin, who was only about 10 years old, so I'm freaked out, and I begin to ask around. Nobody will talk to me. I mean nobody. People I've known all my life were slamming the door in my face. So I'm scared and I slip into a little place where they make tortillas to try and call my parents and let them know what's going on. They had a payphone there. But as I'm dialing, this guy says, "Don't call anyone." I look and there's this old man just kind of leaning against the wall around the corner, not even looking at me. He's about 2 feet away. I don't recognize him, but he knows my name and everything. He's acting real casual, but he's whispering to me that I basically need to get out of town. "The Zetas took over your house," he said. "Your grandma's probably dead by now." I'm not going to go into everything he told me, because it's a little sensitive, but he convinced me to hurry back to the bus depot and basically scram. I was a nervous wreck, obviously, and I couldn't stop thinking about my poor grandma and my 10-year-old cousin. I thought the Zetas had beheaded them and tossed them into a ditch or something. I was crying basically the whole way back. Anyway, I didn't call my parents at any point, even though I told them I would. I was afraid even to use the phone. That's how paranoid I was. I was thinking maybe the Zetas were looking for me after I showed up and disappeared. So when I got home, my parents were pretty worried, wondering why I hadn't called. So I told them everything that happened. Of course, they freaked out and started calling my uncles who lived nearby and planning to go down there and see if my grandma was still alive. But then the phone rings, and it's my grandma. She said she was at the bus station and if somebody could go pick her up. Long story short, she told us a fucked up story. So I guess I should have explained, but the Zetas are a drug cartel. Apparently they showed up in town and they picked my 10-year-old cousin. They told him, "We'll be back in a week, and by then, be ready to come with us. If you refuse, we'll kill you and your grandma." They left, but my little cousin never told my grandma about it till the week was up. They were out shopping, and he said he was afraid to go back to the house, and he told her the Zetas were looking for him. Grandma is scared, but they're already on the way back. When they get there, the house is already full of dead bodies, decapitated and dismembered, just piled on the floors. There is blood everywhere. They both saw this, and they've both described it to me in horror. Anyway, they heard voices in one of the rooms, so they bolted and hid out in the desert for days before managing to secure a ticket out of there. During that time is when I showed up and never found anyone. I never saw any dead bodies, and I never saw any blood. Maybe it was cleaned up by then. The point is, the weird man who warned me. I didn't know him, and I still don't know who he is. My grandma isn't sure either. His description doesn't really tell you a lot, but I'm glad he was there.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.